Celinda and Chris, as our two pollsters on here, I want you guys, Celinda, we can start with you, to talk to us a little bit about the difference between who turns out in a midterm versus who turns out in a presidential. We know that the percentage of voters who turns out much lower in a midterm than a presidential year. And what we think we know thus far about the kinds of people who are going to turn out in 2018, if it's going to look different than we've seen in previous midterms.
So what we know is that if you take the estimates of voters out of 2016, project the population trends, et cetera, that there are 40 million voters, if everything were normal, there are 40 million voters who turned out in 2016 who are not going to show up in 2018, if everything were normal. That's 25 million progressive voters, 25 million from the rising American electorate, a little over 14 million from the non-rising American electorate. We know that includes 11 million unmarried women who are very progressive voters, very motivated by women candidates, but haven't shown up particularly in high numbers in the primaries or the special elections so far. And we know that that's 17 million millennials. And the millennials have had very uneven turnout. They had record high turnout in Virginia, higher than even under
For the governor's race.
For the governor's race, this last year. But been very low in Democratic primaries, and they're voting very Democratic right now. So the short answer is we're not completely clear about that. We do have higher enthusiasm among Democrats and Republicans. We also have higher consolidation. One of the things is we had a lot of people turn out in 2016 who then went and voted for third-party candidates. And now the Democrats are more consolidated than the Republicans, although the Republicans are pretty darn consolidated. And I'll let Chris address that. So we also know that we can't start getting people out to vote 2 days before the election. And we can't just drive up the van and tell them hop in. And we can't say, we've relied a lot on peer pressure and things like that. And we've just finished some new research where we went into people and tried the time-old tradition and said, you know, Amy, your friends and family are voting, you need to vote too, the peer pressure technique. And actually these voters, the millennials and the unmarried women said, I don't know who your friends and family are, but mine aren't turning out to vote. So either we need non-voters to get new friends and family by election day, that can be kind of hard, or we need to think of some new techniques. So I think it's very, very unclear who's going to turn out to vote, and I think it will be a major factor in 2018.
Yeah, and Chris, normally the turnout that we see, or by normally meaning recently, people who turn out in a midterm election, they're older, it's a whiter electorate, they're more highly educated. That has usually gone to the benefit of Republicans. That's basically has been traditionally the Republican base. Do you see that continuing? And are there other trends that you're seeing out there that you think this could make a really big difference in the kinds of people who turn out and vote?
Yeah, so I think that there's some X factors in 2018 that are unique and may present a perfect storm. One thing I'm particularly interested in is this young generation, 18-year-olds or turning 18-year-olds. And here's what's happening this election cycle that hasn't happened in previous cycles. The students at Parkland High School, Marjorie Stoneham Douglas, galvanized these kids. I know this because my daughter just turned 18. She attended the largest high school in Virginia, and she and her peers, they walked out with the Parkland kids. They did a registration drive in their AP Gov classes where 300 or 400 of them registered to vote, and all among them, they are planning to vote. And it's really important, I think, that you look at these young people, these 18-year-olds, these 19-year-olds, maybe even 20-year-olds. They are not millennials, and they don't have the attitudes of millennials, and they are, you know, I've looked at some data on this, and I also, you know, observe it with my daughter and her friends. They are angry, but they think that they can do something. They think they can affect change, so that increases their likelihood to turn out to vote.